is also a day that brings a lot of joy to my heart because I have the first hard copy of our next title that's coming out, and that's what I'm going to read from. And this is Shanti Fights for Her Rights by Atlantic Canadian author Marcia E. This is a teen novel about the illegal practice of child marriage that's still happening in rural India. This book is launching this month, February 21st, and we're very excited. So this is a first peek and a first listen of an excerpt from the book. So the chapter that I'm going to read, or the pages I'm going to read, is a scene following a meeting that Shanti, who's the main character of the book, her father has had with a potential suitor, a man that he wants her to marry. And she's only 14. And he's not very happy with her behavior because she does not want to marry this man. She wants to continue going to school. So it is partway through the book, and I'm going to just read a few pages for you. And I've got my handy dandy Read Atlantic bookmark here to mark my pages. So here we go. By the time my father and grandmother returned from the fields, a tangled mixture of feelings swirled inside me. Anger at my father simmered under excitement about a Balika Sangha starting in our village. On top of that was fear and worry about the people coming to my house that evening. As I served my father's supper, I managed to act like an obedient daughter. I put on my plain brown salwar kameez for the meeting and ignored my grandmother's comments that it was not my best one. I refused to wear my favorite blue one that looked much better on me. After we'd cleaned up the supper things, I arranged the food I'd prepared on a tray and prepared the tea. My grandmother was watching for the arrival of the visitors. "They're coming," she announced as she moved from the doorway. "Remember everything I told you, Shanti," she said, shaking a finger at me. This is actually the scene where the people are coming. Sorry. My father told me to stand at the back door beside my mother. I could see my father, followed by the son, who was a few years older than me, and the mother behind him. Their feet smudged my Mugaloo design, and they didn't even notice it. I was glad I hadn't spent much time on it. They entered our house and sat down on our best mat, the parents on either side of their son. My father introduced my grandmother first as the elder in charge. He beckoned my mother and me forward. "This is my wife and my lovely daughter, Shanti." My grandmother had made me practice a proper greeting. I tilted my head slightly and stared at the floor, trying to show that I wasn't interested. My father told me to bring tea. I was tempted to put some pepper or chili powder in their tea, but I didn't dare. I almost started giggling, remembering the fun Danya and I had talking about what I could do to make the food taste bad. My baby sister started to whimper, and my father motioned for me to take her outside. I carried her to the backyard and whispered, "Thank you, little one, for getting me out of there, away from them. They can talk all they want. I won't let them plan my life." I was tempted to stay near the doorway and listen, but instead I stood in the shadows where I could watch them. I couldn't imagine living with those people. The son looked grouchy and bored, and his parents argued with loud voices. Surely my father would see it was ridiculous to consider discussing marriage with them, and the whole idea was so wrong. After a while, my mother came outside. She took my sister from me and said, "Shanti, your father wants you to go in. They will ask you some questions. Answer politely." "Mother, this is all so foolish. Father must see these people are just wanting the dowry and a servant to order around." "Shh." My mother put a hand on my mouth so I wouldn't say any more. "Don't do anything to anger your father or bring shame on our family." She gripped my arm. "Please, Shanti." I turned from her and went inside. "Sit here," my father said, patting the mat beside him. "I told them your grandmother and mother have taught you well in making meals and keeping a house clean." "Tell me how you make a vegetable stew," the wife demanded. I was surprised at the question, but was easy to answer. Staring at the floor, I slowly listed the steps and only basic ingredients. My grandmother would be annoyed with my reply, as I left out several things. The woman grunted. She asked more questions about cooking and cleaning, and I answered briefly. The man cleared his throat and stood up. "That will do. We must return to our village before it gets too dark." His wife and son were getting to their feet. My father got up and said, "As you wish. Thank you for coming." "Namaste." "Namaste," the others mumbled as they went through the doorway. They put on their sandals. The father picked up the lantern and left. I stayed sitting on the mat watching them leave. I pressed my lips together to keep from saying anything. Mother came into the room, and my father turned toward us. He crossed his arms and stood there. I glanced at my mother and grandmother, who were looking at him, waiting for him to speak. What was he thinking? He'd probably criticized my behavior. I'd thought about a reply that wouldn't anger him, though it'd be hard to stay respectful. Finally, he said, I need to sleep. We'll talk about this tomorrow. Shanti, get the sleeping mats ready. I unrolled the mats and blankets. I lay awake a long time, wondering what my father would say about the meeting. Did he care so little about me he'd agreed to send me off to live with those people? If he said I was going to do that, I have to find a way to delay the plans until I could get help from the others at a Sangha meeting. I'd talk to as many girls as possible about Balika Sanghas and convince them to come to the first meeting. I thought of Danya returning to school tomorrow without me. Tears filled my eyes and trickled down my cheeks. So that's Shanti Fights for Her Rights. And you can pick up a pre-order. They're available from most online retailers to order ahead of time. And when the launch date on February 21st comes, you can get your copy. I'll be reading from two others of our, there we go, Atlantic Canadian authors later today. So happy Read Aloud Day, and I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope you're reading lots of great books. We'll talk to you later. Bye for now.